this is the third attempt of me trying to go over this in this shoot. Today I'm going to be talking about a relatively controversial study that came out in the past month or two. Actually, this month, published February 15th, 2023. So last week, about how the average penis size has increased 24% in the past 30 years. There are some issues, and I'm going to get into that. But first, if you like what I do, consider buying my supplements at leviathansups.com or Amazon. That was Vigor that I pointed to, which is back in stock. That is our best bang for your buck, stimulant-free, nitric oxide boosting pre-workout. So it might be up your alley. It pairs well with most other pre-workouts on the market. So let's get into it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through it real quick and then point out things that I find issues. Okay. So, this is a meta-analysis done by a bunch of Italian doctors. Let's see. A systemic review of a meta-analysis pulled 75 papers out from filters. Okay? They have found that the average penis size is 13.93 centimeters, which is 5.5 inches. So, I've been saying the average is somewhere between 5 and 6 inches since I started my men's health stuff. So, nothing has really changed, okay? However, when they dissected the group over from 1990 to 2021, they have seen an increase in penis size of 24%. Now, that's where the issue lies. Do you know what happened in 1989? The invention of Viagra. So, right off the top, that would cause issues as men get better erection quality. We are not seeing the true erect size of these individuals beforehand, right? Okay, And then they also based it off of ethnicity as well. So the stretch flaccid length came out to be about 13 centimeters, or between 12.5 to 13.5 centimeters. And then erect length, this is where you guys should listen up, was anywhere from 9.5 centimeters to 16.75. Or 16.75. So 6.5, that's high. And then 9, which is 3.5. And these are the averages of these studies, by the way. Not like the small and largest, but the averages these studies came up with. That is a huge discrepancy, right? So, and that came to 13.93 centimeters, was about 5.5 inches. So the average penis is somewhere between 13.2 centimeters and 14.5 centimeters, which is still under 6 inches. Okay. So this is where it gets a little complicated. This table talks about how they divvied up the data. So if you notice, and it will be more apparent when we look at the graphs in the next page, but from 1990 to 2021, the stretched flaccid size in general dropped, what is that? 1.5 centimeters, almost 2 centimeters. Meanwhile, they are saying it has almost increased 1.5 centimeters at the same time. Now, think about this logically. Why would that make any sense, right? Your stretched length should be relatively close to your erect length, because when you get erect, your penis has to fill with blood, therefore stretching, right? Why would that be such a major discrepancy? So that's the first big issue with this. If we look at this just based off of ethnicity, they are saying Asians are on average 12 centimeters, but I'll get more into that in a second. There's an interesting graph. Meanwhile, Polynesians are 16 centimeters almost, so they're over 6 inches on average. And then Africans, North Americans, and Europeans are all within a centimeter. Okay. Now, these graphs are the interesting part. Remember how I was talking about, 14 centimeters. So 14 down to 12 and a half. So we're at 5.5 down to 12.5, down to 5. So just looking at the stretch length since 1940, and another research paper made the same argument, that the average penis size has actually decreased. What is that? Like 20%? 10%. See? Because 14 over 12 and a half is going to be about 10%. However, if you nitpick the data, we see from 1990, the average erect length was 12 centimeters, but it's now up to 14 and a half. How does that make any logical sense if stretch flaccid has been trending down for almost a century, but in the past 30 years it has increased? It doesn't make any sense. Secondly, stretch flaccid length is much easier to pull off in a research setting, and it's much more reliable to get a good proxy on penis size in general, because it takes the advent of erection quality out as a variable. So, if it's almost 1-to-1, if that's decreased a centimeter and a half, and the other one's increased a centimeter and a half, what's happening? Another compounding variable. Asia. If you take the first study they did in 1990, the average size was less than, 10 centimeters, which would be under 4 inches. Okay? Now, if we take the most recent study they took, which is from 2015, that is about 14 centimeters. Do you see the issue just with me saying it? Where's my calculator? So we're at 10 centimeters. We're up to 14. We have increased an inch and a half, right? I should have wrote these numbers down. So we're going to say 10 up to 14. One more time. So 10. 3.9. 14. 5.9. They're saying Asians themselves have grown an inch and a half in the past 30 years. Is it possible? Sure. When these research studies were done, 30 years prior, there were a bunch of famines in Asia due to war and misallocation of resources, so many people had stunted growth. So we are talking maybe a 10 to 15% decrease in total male size when it comes to muscle mass and stuff. Because Asian men are not that different, genetically speaking, than European men. Okay. Meanwhile, African men have a higher genetic variance because we all came out from Africa. The more people stayed in Africa, therefore there's going to be a lot more genetic variance. It's quite interesting if you want to look into gene haplogroups. But that's besides the point here. Let's just think about this logically. 30 years, 4 centimeters in penis size for Asia. So if that's true, we need to figure out what's going on in Asia, right? And like I said already, it probably has to do with malnutrition being remediated over the past 30 to 50 years. And now we're finally seeing it catch up. However, North America, first study, apparently every American man was packing 6 inches, 15 centimeters. It has dropped a centimeter in the past 30 years. And if you think about it, how unhealthy the average American male lives, that makes a decent bit of sense. However, I doubt the average man was still as high as 15 centimeters. And then Europe, apparently they all started using penis pumps and extenders and have grown a centimeter at the same time. Another interesting thing from the study, 1990, average penis size for a man over 46 was less than or just above 10 centimeters. Meanwhile, by 2016, it was, what is that, 13 centimeters. You know what happened in 30 years? Viagra became very easy to get. So erection quality does not drop now as you age. It's quite treatable. See, look at 26 to 45. Okay. That shows the mean, even though it did increase slightly, their erection quality did not drop. Now, the interesting variable is this, 18 to 25. Look at that skyrocket. This is probably bad data selection, or just, I won't even want to call it bad data selection, but just the research studies that were done shows that younger men got bigger faster. However, if we look at Asia and the same time frame, I guarantee you a lot of these studies were on Asian men, and that's what caused the increase. So what I'm really getting at is that the West, whatever you define as West, which I think is what, west of Athens or whatever, stayed roughly the same size. Meanwhile, Asian men have gotten bigger because they are no longer in the developing stages, or they were not part of the colonial, or they were not harmed by the colonial powers that be, right? So they were able to feed their people and grow. Another important thing to note, volunteers have stayed the exact same size. Volunteers are going to be larger than average, right? So this is going to be probably about a quarter of an inch to half an inch bigger than the average. 14.5 centimeters, literally pinned. However, urology patients have increased. Again, that could be selection bias. More Asian men were studied in this time. Therefore, the increase in size. Also, the increase in use of Viagra caused men suffering with ED to increase in size. And then this chart's just a little weird. So this is saying how the erection was achieved. If they could get erect by hand, that's what spontaneous is. Otherwise, ICI is intracavitous injection, meaning they put a drug in the man to cause their penis to become erect. I'm assuming they got much better with it over time with proper dosing, as you know, as you do with new medicines, and that's why it is roughly the same. And again, there is going to be selection bias no matter what. The study goes on, it did point out a few things. One, stretched length is not necessarily a great indicator all the time, because depending on the measurer, they may not be using enough force, which they're saying is 450 G, which they pulled out of their butts. 450 G is about a pound of force to fully lengthen the penis. However, if a person was a little too gentle, they could cause an issue. Second of all, they pointed out that self-reported lengths should be regarded with caution. And then studies attempting to analyze spontaneous erections are going to have varying degrees of erection quality. Therefore, they're not necessarily going to be the best to go off of. And this is talking about ethnicities and the differences in penis size. If you look at the chart and where it ends, it is all within a centimeter of each other, even with Europe doing Europe things. Okay, so Asian men are pretty close to North American men now. And honestly, I'm pretty sure Europeans are going to be roughly the same size. Like, this is probably selection bias more than anything. I'm not going to go and check every 70 or all 75 studies to prove my point, but that's where I'm thinking it's still within a centimeter, so it's not that big of a deal. What I'm getting at is, like, that study had some not significant flaws, but there's definitely issues with it. But the real issue comes with scientific reporting. And if you guys have been in science for a while, you'll know for a fact that most journalists don't know what the fuck they are talking about. So when you see these TikTokers or whatever journal or journalists saying the average is now 6 inches, it's not. It literally said in the third paragraph that it's 5.5. As I scroll all the way up to the top just to prove a point, flaccid length, 8 centimeters. 14 centimeters, 13.93 centimeters, right there. Like, it is clear as day. However, what they did is they went down to this right here, grab the mean, 14.55 cm, and they're like, oh, this is great. This is just under 6 inches. I'm going to freak out so many young men and get a bunch of clicks. Meanwhile, not even look at if the data makes sense. Because, again, stretch length decreased at the same rate as their increase. So what's happening, right? And that's what this journal is really asking. Hey, can someone please double check this? We need more studies on penis size. So, we live in an era where outrage, fear, and anger dominate our emotions. As men, we need to be, just humans in general, we need to be aware that people are trying to piss us off for money, because the more angry we are, the more likely we are to click, the more afraid of our standing in the world, the more likely we are going to rant about it. So what I'm saying really is, guys, is you got to think critically about this stuff. Like, I get it, we're not all scientifically inclined. That's part of my job here, is making sure you guys don't get led the wrong way. But if I see another post saying the average is now 6 inches, it's not. Okay? It's straight up not. That's the issue with meta-analysis, is that there's going to be flaws in the studies, and those studies, the flaws from those studies carry over to the meta-analysis. So you're going to have these weird fluctuations, and it's hard to normalize. It's great for like painting a big picture, but for a specific data set like penis size, which is never going to be fully understood, as we're not going to get a accurate measurement from every man of every size, as the selection bias, cognitive dissonance, etc. kicks in, unless we literally go door to door, say this is the dick police, let me measure your dick, write it down, and go on to over 100,000 men randomly. It has to be random. That's the most important thing. We're never going to have a good idea of penis size. And a lot of people pointed out that the average size, this is on r/science, is actually probably smaller than what these guys are saying because of those compounding variables. Now, believe what you want to believe. They make a great point. I'm still going to say the average is 5.5 inches until definitively proven otherwise. So I'm probably rambling at this point. I am definitely losing my voice. So, yeah, when you see these inflammatory journals, articles, whatever you want to call them, think critically. Make sure you actually understand what they're saying before you try to spread it, because that's exactly what they want, is outrage. So anyway, Leviathan Wellness, Leviathan Sops, Vigor on Amazon. Help me out. This is BD signing off.